Longtime viewers of my channel will know I really just want to support the things I enjoy. But sometimes, if you really want to support something, you have to take a step back and point out when something's wrong. And that's what we're going to have to do today, sadly. I'm going to talk about how I'm concerned for systemic reaction, the people that brought us both Generation Zero and Second Extinction. Not just for them now, but for the future, and how things are not quite reaching the goals the company started with. Generation Zero is the game that really introduced us to systemic, the granddad of the ideals that systemic reaction aimed to achieve upon its inception. To quote the Systemic Reaction website, "Working side by side with our players, we want to create sandboxes with unique settings that allow your creativity to thrive." This one opening statement really had me sold. Finally, an approach to development that valued its players as more than just a metric, but as individuals with creativity, passion, and support for the long-term projects that they were creating, that they were equally passionate to create, wanting to make games like the ones that kept us up at night as kids. Everything was going great circa 2019 through 2020, with near monthly updates, regular community polls and competitions. A lot of importance was placed on listening to the community and adding what the community had wanted to see. The perfect examples of this being Alpine Unrest, which still stands to be one of the best pieces of paid content Generation Zero has added so far. The introduction of crafting, rivals, and the Reaper. They were basically the golden years of Generation Zero, community and development-wise. Me and many other players have thousands of hours in Generation Zero to prove they did a damn good job of achieving the game that keeps us up at night. After a turbulent year in 2021, where we saw only one update in the span of 12 months, it seemed like Generation Zero had finally pulled its socks up at the beginning of 2022 and was ready to yet again deliver on the promise of working side by side with its players, finally introducing something we had all waited years for, with 2 brand new machines in the Landfall update, and introducing 2 new plot lines to the game. One moving the game outwards with the Soviets, and one flushing out the game world, introducing room for factions on the mainland. The problem is, that year of troubled development had taken a serious toll on the community, and this effort was one that needed to be doubled down on to really snap things back into shape, either following through with the newly introduced plotlines or flushing out the lack of enemy variety. Adding 2 new machines was great, and they brought their own unique aspects to the table of machine infighting and unique behaviors, but 2 machines still only really have the half-life of 2 to 3 months when stretched out as far as they'll go. Then came the Base Assault update. We had an expansion to the Soviet plotline with a short mission chain, and even though it was good to see the Soviet plotline expanded, it was nowhere as close to the directionality the game needed to pull it into a forward momentum this year. In Base Assault, we saw more locations opened up for base building, essentially a compromise between the folks that asked for one base and the folks that asked to build freeform across the map. It was later revealed that these procedural bases had also eaten up a ton of developmental focus in 2021. And that's where I realized there was a communication issue forming. We had no idea why 2021 happened. While it was happening, we were simply left to assume the worst about everything, only being told about the issues with Xbox that were vague and never fully described until afterward. But imagine if the team had communicated that they were working on a big feature, attempting to reach the requests of the community. Even just being told something along those lines a few times while they worked on it would have had a huge impact. Procedural bases, though a really cool concept of repeatable gameplay, brought a huge amount of issues with them. Issues we're still facing months down the road. And I wish I could feel confident in the team's ability to solve this issue, but I've had my own growing problems with the team's approach to solving these problems for about a year now. Let's kick back to the beginning of 2021. There was a repeatable gameplay feature introduced called assignments. Now, if anyone that's played Generation Zero for half a minute knows that these assignments have been left in the game completely bugged out. It's been over a year now without any word on them or any sort of progress. Or even earlier than that, the bikes, an issue for most of the community since their first inception, back shortly after the game had launched. Or the huge performance issues on console, unresolved map tears, and more. This is what I like to call Generation Zero's fix-it-never approach, and it's possibly one of the biggest things keeping the game from reaching its full potential. I would love to see the team take a much more healthy approach to issues like this, either admitting folly and the inability to solve issues, clarifying where issues sit at as a priority level to the community, so we can know whether or not a serious issue is being looked after, or even being looked at in the first place, or best case scenario, letting us know there's progress being made on something that's a pain point in the community. Transparency builds trust. The previous approach of Systemic with its original ideals, I think they understood that and realized how important community and consumer trust is. Even though they didn't perfectly achieve it, their actions and communication were genuine to the community. But here we are in 2022. After the fall of ideals, we're left with the game rewriting its main campaign, something that literally no one asked for in the game. We have no idea where things are going, the lack of communication, and moving towards copying and pasting more bases across the map. It's just not looking very good, folks. We, at most, need like 3 bases in a region for the procedurally generated bases to still have effect, but not become so repetitive that it loses all its worth. All the time you spent over 2021 developing this feature, it's wasted by the decision to excessively copy and paste base assaults across the map instead of focusing on improving the overall experience. If every location was totally revamped, then maybe, yeah, sure, it would be neat. But the team mostly just adds one locked house to these places, sometimes even less. It's taking up space you could further devote to things that are worthwhile for the community to engage in sometime later on down the road. And now we have the misguided updates in the latest New Dawn update and the upcoming Recon update, both of which focusing on these intro mission revamps that, again, no one asked for, but now is taking more focus than either of the 2 previously introduced plotlines from this year. If Generation Zero's upper management thinks the main missions need revamps, then please communicate with the community on it. Stick to those ideals, and if the community as a whole wants it, definitely take that focus. But if we're all hyped for one thing like the Soviets or the NPC stories we were experiencing in the first place, then wouldn't the better option be to work side by side with the community to bring the story we all agree on? I really hope that Generation Zero will get back to the ideals that Systemic set out with in the first place. Sure, lately things haven't been great, but there's a ton the team can do from this point to make this game the success it deserves to be. The focus just needs to be put in the right place. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin for Systemic reaction. Second Extinction. A cooperative dino shooter doomed from the start. For me, what I've been most disappointed by is the lack of any credible single-player focus. One of the biggest things echoed from streams and videos when the game launched was the lack of any sort of single-player experience. And the lack of focus towards these requests, in my opinion, is what killed this game. Focusing more on a pseudo-live service approach, most updates were based on adding events to the game and infrastructure for cheap repetitive content. There have been a few notable additions to the game, from a horde mode to a few requested weapons, but to me the working with the community ideal was never really met for this game, as the technical issues were never properly addressed even up until now. And that's one of the biggest things echoed by the community as a pain point alongside the single-player experience. I really wish things were different for Second Extinction. I would have loved to support it more if it took after more classic Dino games like Dino Crisis or Turok, but with its current approach, I don't know if it can turn things around for people that are in the same boat as me that just want to see some sort of valuable thing to spend their time doing in a single-player experience. In terms of where the game's at right now, they've gone quiet for the better part of this year to reassess how they plan to further develop the game. So I'm really hoping they have something big in store to refresh the player base and save this game from the brink of extinction. And this leaves us finally with Systemic reaction itself, the main thing I'm ultimately concerned about right now. Because yes, these games matter greatly for Systemic and where we are now, but moving forwards with future game releases and the ongoing projects, Does Systemic Reaction plan to stick to working side by side with their players, creating sandboxes with unique settings that allow everyone's creativity to thrive, from the team to the community? I really hope so, because they were doing something really special in the first place. AA video games with a tight-knit approach to its communities, and most importantly, following through on that promise. So, thank you for watching. If you have any comments or maybe your own concerns, throw them up in the comments down below. I know what I've said in this video might be a little blunt, but on the real, much love to all the parties involved with Systemic, Generation Zero, and Second Extinction. I'm out here hoping the best. Cheers, folks, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, peace.